Hi, welcome to I Can Make That. This is Jen. Today I'm using an image by Rubber Cottage. It's called Beach Chair. This here is Memento ink. I'm using this because I'm going to be coloring with Copics, and I want to show you how to color an image with Copics. And I'm going to do this in double time speed so that you can watch it and not be completely bored out of your mind. Memento ink is a great ink for using with the Copics. If you use something like StazOn, you're going to end up having a smeared image, but the Memento ink will stamp crisp and clear, and you won't have any smearing. That's due to the fact that the Copic markers are alcohol-based dye ink and need certain kinds of ink for stamping if you want to be successful with them. When you're coloring with Copic markers, you have a couple different choices of ways to keep track of the markers you're buying. One is to get a hand color chart, which you can get directly from Copic or you can download from the internet. Another is a hex chart, which was developed by Sandy Alnock, and I really like this chart because it shows the relationship between the different colors that you may own and gives you new ways to use them that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. Now when you're using the markers, the first letter is the color family, so E would be for earth tones. Then you have a number, and the first number is the color purity, or how much gray is in it. And the second number is going to be the color's value, how dark or light it is. When you're picking out colors to use, especially initially, you want to look at that third number and probably buy something that's one or two values up and down from whatever you're using. For instance, if it was a B05, you might want a B03 and a B07 or 8 to mix nicely together. Working with Copics markers, you're going to want to start with your darker color first and work your way into lightest, or another way is to start with your lightest and work your way to the darkest. I generally like to start with my darkest color. In this case, I started with RV02, Sugared Almond Pink, and I started coloring the edges and anywhere that the creases in the umbrella would fall. And then I moved to the RV10, the pale pink, and pulled in the color a little bit more both directions, from the top down and from the bottom up. And then I moved to RV00, Water Lily, and I pulled the color in even further until I got the effect I wanted. When I moved on to the sand, I started using some of the colors like E44, which is clay. I also moved to E43, dull ivory, and E42, sand white. First I went in and I colored all of the areas that would have some shadow, parts that I wanted to have a little more defined, and also to get a line in the beach where the water would meet the sand. Then I went in with the E42, or E43, sorry, and I started pulling all the color in, blending it, and pulling it down so it would not look like one color and then another color, but it would mix up a little bit better. I moved over to the E42 to further blend it out. And then I just went back in and started to finish off all the areas. I knew that I was going to be covering up the left side of the card with a few of my paper flowers, so I wasn't too concerned with the line that's going to appear when I colored over one section to another. But and sometimes if you know you're gonna cover something up, I just colored it in so that if you see any of it in the background, you'll see the right color going through. So I just colored it in and I went back and blended it best I could so it wasn't just solid streaks going across the card. And then I was ready to move on to my next section. For the ocean, I used BG13 and BG11. I started out with BG11 and colored up from the sand, And then I went in and put my horizon line with my BG13. I wanted to be able to see where the ocean would probably stop and meet the sky. So I went in and colored everything pretty dark with the BG13, and then I went back with the BG11 and blended the two sections together. I think that the streaking from left to right looks nice for water, so that didn't bother me at all. And I went ahead and just left most of that, just blended the two sections together. For the sky, I used B000 Pale Porcelain Blue, B00 Frost Blue, and B02 Robin's Egg Blue. I wanted to have a distinctive enough color that we went from ocean to sky without any question about which was which. And so I went in with the Frost Blue and I did most of the background coloring. The Porcelain Blue, the B000, I used that just to blend a little bit better at the end. And the Robin's Egg Blue, again, just a little bit of accent. I went in with R24 to give it a little bit of red pops of color on the beach ball and the lighthouse and the pail. One of the most important parts is going to be coloring with your grays. All of your shadows and highlights can be really brought out using your grays. I love C3, I use that all the time. I am using it now because I want to have a white Adirondack chair, but you have to use grays really to bring out your whites. So I'm going to use that for all the areas that I want to show shadow and really bring out the pops of white then. And I'll be using that all over this area right now, and then I'll go back in with the C1 and I'll blend it together really nicely. Here I'm going to go in with a little bit of brown for the bottom of the sailboat and a little yellow to do the sail. I'm doing that on purpose because I know that I want to use the plumeria flowers that I designed that are using a pink with a yellow center. So I want to have something in my card to tie that together. And then I'm going to do a little touch up with the blue and move to my gray again. I want to get shadows under everything just a little bit deeper, just to bring everything out a little bit more and give it a little more dimension. Now if you've been looking at the top right corner of the screen at all, you probably noticed that I have a second card that I have a sunset on. I wasn't sure if I liked the way that turned out, but I took a vote and several people told me they did like that one better. So in order to do that, you're going to just punch out a circle. You're going to use that as a mask. And then I pulled some different colors together that are yellows, like Y11, Y17, Y15, and Y38. And I went around the edge of my mask with the Y11 to give it some definition. And then I went in and colored it pretty evenly with the Y11 for starters. And then I switched over to the Y15 just to darken all the edges. And then I moved into the oranges to try to start bringing out that sunset look. So I just dragged out the Y17 a little bit here, made it a little bit thicker, and especially with the Y38, I pulled out the streaks a little bit more at this point and wanted to give it a look like you would normally see at a sunset. So I do have the two versions of the cards, one with and one without the sunset. You can kind of copy whichever you like better, it's just an idea. So I went back in with my blue at this point and I did my sky just to get the background colors all put together here. And then I went back in with the oranges and yellows and started blending. I even put my pink in a little bit just to see how that would look. I think I pretty much covered it up by the time I was done, but I started that way. And I just kept on adding colors over and over again until I was happy with the blend that I had in the end and thought that it looked a little bit like a sunset. You can see I just put a little bit of a highlight below the sun in the water because you would also have that. And then I just kind of blended everything out and kept going until I was happy. In this card, I haven't yet used my grays to go in and color my Adirondack chair. I'm going to be doing that next. And I have to also do the sailboat and everything else in there. But I worked on the sunset first and then went back to do the chairs. So that's about it for this card, and in the next video I'm going to put together the plumarias that I made in the previous video along with this to get a finished card. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.